My schooling has always been in a Adventist church school. And I started in a 2-room school. And I had a passion for it. And I loved my teachers. And teachers that make a big impact on children. And they made a big impact on me. When I was in 4th grade, my teacher had me write down all of my goals for my life. And this is what I wrote down. I wrote down finish grade school and high school, be a student missionary, get married, be a mother, become a nurse, and go to heaven. Well, as you can see, I am not a nurse. The reason I'm not a nurse is my teacher had me shadow a career and do a research project about a career. And when I followed a nurse around, I'm like, no, this is not me. I do not like all the bodily fluids, and I do not like blood. I mean, even being a mother, my husband had to take care of my children when they got hurt. I don't have a stomach for it. Anyway, and as I was growing up, I was the one that was asked to babysit all the kids in the church. I don't know why, but I guess they thought I was responsible. So I even, at that time, discovered that I loved children. Well, I still hadn't decided I wanted to be a teacher yet. Well, I went to Thunderbird Adventist Academy also, and as my senior year, our project was we had to get married to somebody in our classmates, and we had to have a budget, and we had careers, and we had to take different tests, and we had to figure out how to be in life. We even had to carry around a baby doll for a week, take care of it. And I took a career test, and when I took that career test, guess what was on the career as the highest career? Being a teacher. I'm like, oh, okay. I think I could see myself being a teacher. And I have not gone back since that experience of being a teacher. My career of becoming a teacher started at Walla Walla University to become a teacher, and I was there for 2 years. And I accomplished my next goal, which was become a student missionary. And I went to the island of Ponape in Micronesia, and I taught 27 third graders. And I did not know what I was doing because I hadn't had any method classes, but it was a good year. And I became really close to another girl from Canada, somebody from Texas, and somebody from Maine. And the 4 of us became really, really good friends. And we still stay in touch with each other. So after that, because of making such good friendships with these 3 other people, I didn't go back to Walla Walla. I went to Southwestern University in Texas and graduated from there in 94 with a BS in elementary ed and a minor in English. And my senior year, I was doing my student teaching. I had to take some classes in the evening, and I also was the RA, and I was just exhausted. And I prayed to God, and I said, I can't do this anymore. You've got to change something. So my professor came up to me and said, we have a teacher that needs somebody to sub in their room for about 5 weeks. They're adopting a child, a baby, and I picked you to be that teacher. I'm like, well, I haven't done any teaching classes yet. And she's like, that's okay. You're going to be fine. And I hadn't decided, but guess what? The baby came early. And so my professor, she says, Dr. D, she says, okay, I really need you. Can you do it? And so I said, okay. It was over a holiday weekend. I didn't know the other teachers. I didn't know my students. I hadn't seen the curriculum. I haven't even stepped foot in the school. And I stepped foot in school on Tuesday morning and ended up teaching for 5 weeks before the other teacher came back. And then we team taught together, and you know how babies wake you up in the middle of the night. So I did the mornings, and she did the afternoons. So I did my student teaching sort of backwards. But anyway, so we became really good friends. I used a lot of her teaching strategies, and I was looking for a job because I was a senior. And everywhere I tried to get a job, it wasn't working out. I had a boyfriend in Texas, and I'm like wanting to be there, but that didn't work out. And I'm glad that that didn't work out. But anyway, and she was telling me that her brother in Lexington, Kentucky was looking for a teacher, and it was going to be grades 1 to 4. And she was telling me this, and he says he just can't find a teacher. And I says, well, how about me? And she's like, yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. So I applied for the job and went there for the interview, and that was quite an ordeal because the superintendent was supposed to pick me up, didn't pick me up because he had this migraine and lost track of time and was sleeping. So I was stuck in this airport, and then I had to drive all this way and stay at the school board chairman's house, which I wouldn't recommend. That was sort of really harebrained. That was sort of having somebody stay at your house like that when you're doing a job interview. Anyway, I did get the position and taught there grades 1 through 4 for a couple years. Well, 6 months after being there, my husband, Tony, was 45 minutes up the road. And I think God orchestrated the position for me to be there because I was supposed to meet my husband. And because every direction that I have gone in my career, there has been a reason for God to move me from here, to move us to there. And I don't know if everybody knows the story about us coming here to Cottonwood, but we had thought the door was closed. We'd interviewed here. They had said they were hiring somebody else. That person decided to go somewhere else, and then the board's like, no, we want Cheri here. Well, at that time, this is when the COVID was happening, and they said, we are not going to move you. You have to pay for your own expenses. And furthermore, you have to come up with at least 3 to 5 students before we will give you a contract. And so through lots of prayer from the board and through our family and and friends and family of us, we prayed about it. Well, we were on the way to my other school in North Carolina, and the superintendent was sending me a text message, and she says, are you still needing a job? And we're like, wow, this is really weird, because we thought the door was completely closed. So anyway, I sent her a message back, and I'm like, yeah, we're still looking. And at that point, we still were told we had to look. Well, after that, that's when we're told we had to find some students. So David Hilbers gave me a list of students that could be in the school, and through lots of prayer, Zoom calls, text messaging, calling, I recruited enough students to open the school, to keep the school open. And that was 3 students. The board said, okay, we're just going to go for 3 students. Guess how many students we started with? We started with 11. God really was opening the doors for us, and even though it's been really a hard adventure experience for our family to move here because we didn't have a home until February. But we love our home. And we know that through that experience, we would not have gotten to know the Ellises, which have become dear friends to us, and other people, the pastor and everybody. We had to be here all at the same time. There is something that's going to be awesome that's going to happen. I don't know what it is, but I do know that these 4 children that I told you about at offertory are just so excited to learn about Jesus. One of the little boys has never, ever learned about Jesus, and he is asked to have baptism. So continue praying for our school, and thank you for your prayers, and hope you'll come on Sunday to support them next week.
That's a hard act to follow. We have become friends with the Jenkins, and we're very grateful. Maybe that's why the Lord led us here a year ago. The Lord leads in strange and mysterious ways. I like English. I like definitions. And so I looked up the definition for the word education. Okay? The knowledge or skill obtained or developed by a learning process. Doesn't have to be in school for you to learn. A program of instruction of a specific kind or level. That's where the teachers come in. An instructive or enlightening experience. That's when you really learn. Experience. I'm sure you've all had learning experiences, both the good kind and the not so good kind. But you never forgot it, did you? The imparting or acquisition of knowledge. Who was your first teacher? Your parents. Your mother. Your father. My mother taught me to listen, to obey, and to be curious. But sometimes my curiosity prevented me from hearing her voice. I can remember one time when I was watching the ants, because I'm a curious person. That's why I like outdoor things and that kind of stuff, and that's why I'm really good with Pathfinders. We need more young people in Pathfinders. That's my plug. The ants were marching along in single file, one after the other, a very long line, and some of them were carrying stuff bigger than them. Ants are amazing. If you've never studied ants, do so. So Mother called me, but I didn't hear, as I was busy studying the ants. It was lunchtime. So pretty soon she had to come out in the backyard and get me. And there were consequences for not listening and obeying. So I learned to listen and obey. I love this little book on education. It's got a lot of good stuff in it. And one of them is on obedience. One of the first lessons a child needs to learn is the lesson of obedience. Before he's old enough to reason, he can be taught to obey. By gentle, persistent effort, the habit is established. Help the child to see that parents and teachers are representatives of God, and that, as they act in harmony with Him, their laws in the home and school are His. And that was my goal as when I became a parent. My sisters and brother and I went to public school. We didn't have the advantage of a Christian education, but we had a mother who taught us spiritual things. She read to us Bible storybooks. We had that 10-volume Bible storybooks. I love those things. When I learned to read, oh my goodness, I read them all. Read them all, many times. Uncle Arthur's bedtime storybooks. Wonderful educational pieces in there. And a child learns those things from a story. Jesus taught with stories and parables. And the people just soaked it up. And they understood. And they listened. I learned honesty, faith, trust, love, and responsibility. I'm the oldest, and so I had to help out at home. My mother had to work and to provide things for us, and so I had to help. It did well for me. As time passed, I grew up, married, and had a family of my own. Now, before I grew up, before I got married and had children of my own, babies were not my thing. They'd cry when they saw me. I don't know what the deal was. I didn't think I was that ugly, but whatever. But after I had my son was my firstborn. I looked down at this little person. Well, maybe not so little. He weighed 9.5 pounds when he was born. And I said, This is a lot of responsibility. God, you have to help me to know how to train this child to be your child. And he did. Child Guidance is a wonderful book. So is the Bible. Have you ever read Proverbs much recently? Whole Proverbs is talking about child rearing. Solomon's talking to his son. And the purpose and theme in Proverbs 1, for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and fair, for giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning get guidance. For understanding proverbs and parables, the sayings and riddles of the wise. And then this one, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Now we see older people, and I'm in that category, as being wise. Well, some are wise in the ways of the Lord, and some are wise in the ways of the world. The wise of the Lord is much better. For the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. Isn't that wonderful? And this is what we train our children at home, and this is what they learn in school. For the mouth of the Lord comes knowledge and understanding. I taught my children like I was taught. The mother is the child's first teacher, and she has a very important duty. During the period of greatest susceptibility and most rapid development of his education is to a great degree in the mother's hands. To her first is given opportunity to mold the character for good or evil. She should understand the value of her opportunity, and above every other teacher should be qualified to use it wisely. My mother was a good teacher. She wasn't perfect. There was only one perfect person in this world. But true education means more than the perusal of a certain course of study. It means more than a preparation for the life that now is. It has to do with the whole being and the whole period of existence possible to us. It is the harmonious development of the physical, mental, and spiritual powers. It prepares the student for the joy of service in this world and the higher joy of wider service in the world to come. That is true education. A child will have many teachers in his or her lifetime. Mom, dad, grandparents, school teachers, church, Sabbath school teachers, pastors, and other people in the church. You're all witnesses and examples to our children. Friends, neighbors, and when you get old enough to have a job, a boss, or if you're the boss, the employees. You can always learn something from somebody. And experience is the best teacher, and also the hardest. How many of you learned to ride a bicycle? Did you ride it just perfect the first time you got on it? Not me. I fell down, scraped my knee, my elbows. My dad just says, get back on and do it again. You know what? By the end of the day, I was riding that bicycle. I could ride down our driveway and across the street and up the next driveway and crash into the neighbor's garage. But I was riding the bicycle. Pretty soon I got good enough where I could just go right down the road. We lived in a subdivision. And there wasn't very many cars. And pretty soon I just wanted to travel all over the place. I could still ride a bicycle. It has a flat tire, but I need to get it fixed. Children. Fire is very fascinating to a child. A source of heat, the campfire in the sun. They play in it with the sticks and whatnot. And then they wave them around in the air when sparks are just flying and says, "You're going to get burned." "No, I'm not." "Well, yes, I did. But I learned the hard way." That's from experience. I learned that all plants are not nice. You know, there's such thing as like poison oak, poison ivy. I don't know if you have that here. But you have plants that have stickers on them. And they poke your fingers and they're hard to get out. Those aren't nice plants. They may look nice, but they're not nice. We have weeds in our yard. They're beautiful purple flowers on them. But all around the stems and everything are pointy stickers. This is called silver nightshade, in case you want to know. We've been digging them up. My husband's been digging them up. They just keep coming up everywhere. It is awful. I learned to bake bread. I learned to knead it, put it in the oven, which was fine when we had a gas stove. But then after we moved to Alaska, I had to cook it in a wood stove. You got to make sure that the heat stays good. Otherwise, you have brown on one side or black and not done on the other. But I think I can still bake bread in a wood stove. I learned about chopping wood. You don't put your foot on the stump when you're splitting kindling. That could be hazardous to your health. And my dad did that, and he knew better. I learned to sew. You wouldn't want to see my first example of sewing. I was going to wear a dress today that I made for my son's wedding, but it was really snug. But that was 26 years ago, 27, I don't know. And the side had split out, and I forgot about it, so I didn't wear it. But it sure looks a lot better than my first example. Driving. My mother made me take office courses in high school instead of driver's ed, which I really wanted to do because I wanted to be independent. But I took the office courses. So after I got married, my husband taught me to drive. Well, it was nice. We had finally a car. We dated on bicycles because he didn't have a car. But I learned that when we had a Volkswagen later, I had to learn to operate a clutch. You all know how to operate a clutch? Yeah, well, it's much easier to do an automatic. Much easier. But I learned to drive a clutch. A lot of things I have learned. But the best thing that I have learned is that Jesus loves me. Always, forever, no matter what happens. And I'm standing here today because God saved my life. But that's a different story. So we all learn all of our lives until the Lord closes our eyes and the next thing we see is Jesus coming in the clouds. So don't be afraid to learn. Always be ready to learn something new every day. Because God gives us that opportunity, and that is true education.